if you could go back in time in a time machine, you know everything you know right to the second, to 18 or 22-year-old you, what do you tell yourself?
I would have told myself not to go off to a university because I was ready to be an entrepreneur back then, but I was so focused on what other people thought and how entrepreneurship wasn't the way. You had to have a plan B in case entrepreneurship didn't work out. So I went out and got a 4-year degree. Guess who's now sitting on $115,000 in debt from a 4-year university because he listened to everybody else and didn't follow his dreams initially. And so I see people in my feed who are running an agency, but they're also getting their degree in marketing. I'm like, why the hell are you doing that? If you are called and meant to be an entrepreneur, go and do it. Don't take this plan B of going to a university. And again, I met my wife when I went off to college. And so I joked that it cost me $100,000 to meet my wife. And so 18, 20-year-old me, I would have gone all in. I would have, even if I moved because I wanted to go from St. Louis to Kansas City, after my first year where I really felt in my heart like college isn't for me, but I need this plan B. I don't want to disappoint my parents. Or I don't want to disappoint this. I should have dropped out and gone and worked the sales job I was working at T-Mobile, just done that full time and then built a business on the side. I didn't need the degree. I'm doing what I was doing beforehand, just with the debt behind something that I'm not using these 2 fancy pieces of paper that are up here on my wall.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to season 4 of Legacy's Journey, where we talk about creating what outlives you. I'm your host, Cameron Williams, owner of Kinley Consulting, where we focus on strategic financial growth for marketing agencies so that they can live the dream life they deserve and not be a slave to their business through CFO services and consulting. Now, this is season 4, where we are focusing on companies who have either bought, sold, scaling, or excelling. So, I had to dig into my network, you know what I'm saying, and figure out like who's done this, like who are some people I know. And then it was like, surprise, somebody was like, guess what we just did? We just sold our agency. So I was like, this is perfect. We were talking every week anyway. So Brad is here. Welcome to the pod. Tell the people name of the company, and how long you been in business.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brad with Talent Fuse, we just launched on April 1st of this year, and had a marketing agency up until I'd say about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, that I was running the last 2.5 years. So kind of been going through some transitions with that as some kind of closing the door on that chapter as this chapter and the doors of that chapter have been opening. So.
All right, cool. So let's jump into it, because a lot of people, we know this is kind of a hot topic, and statistics say like less than 10 or 15%. I think it's like 7% of business owners actually sell their business. So really quickly, tell us, what was the last business that you sold? Like, what was it? Give us some of the stats, and then we'll kind of move into some of those specific number types of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So my marketing agency, we worked with a lot of contractors, home service companies. I got into the agency world probably 9-10 years ago. So I had a different business before that. Was always freelancing on the side, building websites. It was always a side hustle for me for the longest time. And then back in 2023, so actually 2022, that business closed down. Took a sales job for like 6 months. And after that, I was like, I can't do this working for somebody else anymore, and went all in on the marketing agency. I quit that job. Didn't have, Cameron, you and I talk a lot about monthly recurring revenue, all that stuff. Didn't have any of that in place. And just kind of like went all in. And 2023 was a crazy ride with that aspect. And then 2024 is really when I pivoted into working with the contractors and the home service industry. And so at the beginning of 2024, I basically had like nothing in monthly recurring revenue. Everything was project based up until that point, and basically turned on the monthly recurring revenue aspect of things. And we ended 2024 right around 20K in my monthly recurring revenue. 2022 on that aspect had some project revenue and all that stuff coming in addition to that. But that was kind of the growth we just saw in last year with the marketing agency side of things.
Okay, so got up to 20. So then let's start going here. So what made you say, I think I have a better opportunity if I sold the business? Like what got you to that thought? Because it's different ways people get there. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's sickness, sometimes it's they just see a better opportunity. Sometimes they're like, I just hate it and I don't want to do it
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah. So, it's there's a couple different factors here. The selling the business came after the fact. And so what had happened here with like the birth of the idea of talent views and everything, it's kind of ironic. Part of the revenue that my agency is bringing in the last 2 years was actually doing work for other marketing agencies. I had developers who worked for me. We were white labeling work out for other agencies. So they brought in a website project. We were doing the dev work on it. And so through that, I got very good at hiring offshore talent. I was needing to hire developers and everything for those agencies. And so Q3 of last year, Karen, who's now my director of operations, she kind of had the idea, was like, we should just make a business out of hiring offshore talent for agencies. And I was like, no, 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 I'm not going to chase that shiny object. Like the agency is what we're focusing on. Like that's the direction we're going. And so that happened, and my son was born in November of last year. I took a couple weeks away from the business. You and I are connected, so you've obviously seen who's in the NICU and all that stuff, and that kind of forced me to pull away. And when I went to get back into it this year, I was like, I don't know if running a marketing agency is like 100% what it is I want to do. And so I did a bunch of exercises like, top 10 clients, best 10 clients, 10 most recent clients, all that stuff. And I kept coming back to, I was like, okay, I do enjoy the clients I'm working with. I don't enjoy these aspects of an agency, but the clients that I love working with are these marketing agencies that we're doing dev work for and white labeling work out for. And so that was kind of like how the initial idea behind Talent Fuse was born. And like the moment that I decided, actually, I wouldn't say I decided, the moment that God decided that this was my plan, and that was the direction I was going. We went from idea to revenue generating in about 3.5 weeks. You were actually one of the people that I hopped on a call, and I was like, Cameron, have you worked with anybody in the
I
VA
remember
industry
that.
in the
That was in
past?
like
What's
March.
yeah, what's the good, the bad, the ugly? And then I launched it April 1st. I mean, and we went like that. And so then the plan was, let me run both of these. Let me do the agency aspect, and then let me also run Talent Fuse. And that was my goal. And then life got in the way this year. My son went into PICU twice, went into the hospital a third time. My wife was in the hospital, had Talent Fuse that was growing, and it was like, I got to give something up. And so when I looked at the two, I was like, okay, I got an option. I either let go of Talent Views that I just opened up, or I let go of my agency. And the revenue on the Talent View side of things was already beginning to surpass the rate in which we were growing with the agency, that it was like, my answer is clear as to which one I need to let go. And so that's when the acquisition aspect then came into play. I was thinking about all those things, and as I'm beginning to think of those conversations, I'm, you and I talk a lot about God. I see on your Facebook, a lot about God and everything like that. In prayer, I'm like, God, if this is my thing that I need to do and I need to sell this business, like, I want you to kind of show me that that's what I need to do. Then a couple days, my core like A player in the agency who was running everything for me put in his notice and was done working for us. And I'm like, there's my sign. And so at that point, it was like, okay, like there's my sign. I'm done. I'm parting ways with this. And so when I was having those conversations back in March, and I was talking with all these other agency owners about, the VA industry, I had multiple people who told me like, when it comes time, if you're ever ready to sell, reach out to me. And so I reached out to all those people. Obviously, the guy I was acquired by was Adam McChesney. Reached out to him. He's been my coach for the last couple of years, and
Okay, okay.
um,
Shout out to Adam McChesney.
yes, he's been amazing, and so kind of went from we went from idea to revenue generating with Talent Fuse in 3 to 4 weeks. I went from deciding that I was going to do the acquisition to being acquired in about a month as well.
Woo! All right, there was a lot of good stuff in there.
Been a
One of
lot.
the I love that you said though was how, in theory, I want to run both, and I
Mhm.
think we see that even over here on the financial side. clients have multiple businesses, but to your point, at some point you were like, you know what? Life is going on. I don't want to miss out on life. So I have to make a choice to choose. And I think that's very important because there's only so many hours in the day. When you have a young family and or are married, you know you can't skip that out. Not if you want to stay married, happily
Yep.
married.
Yep.
So then I just love how you were like, you know what, which one am I going to pick? Prayed about it, and okay, you found that. So, okay, let's go through. How do I want to word this? Okay, on the sales side, and you don't give us specific numbers
Yep.
unless you super want to, but when you said, okay, I want to sell this business, now you knew who to reach out to, but there's still some type of process that you had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us two or three things that maybe you didn't know going into selling the business that you were like, crap, had I known that, I would have done whatever different. Because a lot of
Yep.
people think it's just as simple as, hey, I want $1 million for it, give it to me. If not, I'm going to walk away when it's not really
Yep.
that cut and dry.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple different things. One, with all of my clients, they were all under a 1 year contract until that 1 year hit, and then it was month to month with a 30-day notice afterwards. So what happened was then we went to go do the acquisition aspect, and you get a multiple of the monthly recurring revenue based off the length of the commitment. And so because I don't have them locked into a long-term agreement, that then decreases the value you can get in terms of selling your company. Because if somebody was coming to me and saying, oh, all your clients just renewed under a 1 year contract, or they're all in for a 1 year contract, or you have this client with 6 months left, that one with 3, then you can get a multiple on the length in which they're in a contract with. And so that was one thing that I didn't even think about, that, like, thinking back now, it's like, well, dang, what I should have done is had in my agreement that at your 1 year, it automatically renews for a year again, unless you reach out to us and say otherwise, type thing. Like those different types of things you don't think about. So that was one thing that, kind of looking back, that I was like, man, I should have done something differently there. I didn't know what it is I wanted. And I'll get into this. And this is kind of the second thing I wish I would have known and done differently is, life got in the way. I really say a lot these last couple of years, but when I went all in on the agency in 23, we went all in on it dependent on my wife's income. She got laid off 3 months later. And then we were getting married 3 or 4 months after that. And so basically, I had debt on the business books because what I was doing is I opened up no interest cards to basically cover the business expenses to then pay myself more to be able for us to be able to live and everything like that. So looking at it, like, I went through an acquisition, all nice, to me, a nice price, fair price, everything like that. But what's happening now is a lot of that acquisition dollars that I got is going towards paying off that business debt, right? And so a lot of that comes down to the profit aspect. You just made a post the other day about companies doing white label and everything like that. That's what I did the first good chunk of my agency. So my margins were cut tremendously, where it was hard for me to keep up and even pay my own bills and keep a roof over my house, and then also pay the bills of the agency, because half my margins are being cut towards going to a white label company. And there's a season and a time and place for all of that, right? Like, it makes sense in certain times of your business, makes sense. It doesn't make sense in others. But that's one thing I would have done differently, is really known my numbers and the profit aspect of things. You talk a lot about profit and all that stuff. Because right now I'd be sitting here at the end of this acquisition. I have two options. I go and pay off a lot of this debt or pay off all of it really from the acquisition aspect of things. That's one option. Or two, if I didn't make that dumb mistake, I'd be sitting here on a bag right now, and I'm not.
On the bag.
And now I am, but I'm not, right? Like, I have two options. I can
Right.
do either one of these. And so it's one of those things, you look at it, it's like hindsight's 2020, and it's like, damn, I wish I wouldn't have made these mistakes. Now, again, life got in the way. We had to do what we had to do. I had to do what I had to do to make things happen. But, like, realistically, I look back at all the things that I've floated on the business account in terms of business costs and everything. It's like, I could have got by not doing that. I could have got by not going on that trip. I could have got by not going to this conference that didn't yield me an ROI, and I had no proof that it was going to yield me an ROI. I just told myself and thought that it would, right? And so there's different things like that I look back at the acquisition aspect of things that, like, Now I'm doing things differently with this. Talent Fuse has no debt. I don't plan to have it on any debt for a long period of time unless it's like to bring in growth aspects of things, and we know the numbers in terms of profit margins, everything like that. So that's the second thing. The third thing I would say is what most people don't realize is, especially in the agency world, the more dependent your agency is on you, the less
Mhm.
valuable you are as a company. And so, thankfully, we only had one client through this entire acquisition that said, because Brad's not going to be there anymore, no thanks. I'm not like this is my notice. I acknowledge there's a 30-day cancellation policy, all that stuff. One client. That's all I had, which is great. But that went into the factor of what I was getting in terms of the acquisition price. And so for me, like the way I'm building Talent Fuse is like I say on a sales call, if I'm hopping off this call and I know this is a done deal, one call close, hey, I booked your onboarding call for X date at X time. Karen from the team, she's gonna go through, recap what we talked about on the call, blah blah blah. Clients don't talk to me after the sales aspect for the most part with Talent Views, unless it's me and a client catching up and has nothing to do with what we're doing with the Talent Views aspect of things. I've had clients now, Talent Views, reach out to Karen and the team because they need more VAs they're hiring, so they're doing upgrades through them. That aspect now makes me more likely to have a higher multiple of an acquisition because Talent Fuse is not dependent on Brad. It is in terms of like a lead acquisition right now. It is because all of my business comes in from a personal brand. But like now we're working on how do we launch ads? How do we do those other areas to generate business coming through that's not dependent on Brad because once the deal's closed, it's no longer like it's not Brad meeting with these clients or anything like that. And so those are some things that I've done differently already with Talent Fuse because I didn't do them correctly with the marketing agency.
Ooh, I hope y'all caught that. So think about it, and that's something we say all the time. People just, oh, I'm gonna use the cards, I'm gonna do these loans, and then like you said, when you get bought out, people always forget, hey, I got paid, but like you, I love the fact you said I got a choice. I can either be a good steward and say, all right, I'm making up numbers. He did not tell me this, but out of 100K, I got 80 in debt. I can just pay all 80 out.
Mm-hmm.
Or what most people do, what do they do? I'm gonna keep it and I'll just pay off a little bit. Those are great things. And then about not having the business built around you, I love that because a lot of people don't get that because no, Cam, you don't understand. I'm the only one who can do these types of websites or this special type of SEO or AI. They don't think, no, I need to replicate myself.
Yep.
So that way the team is doing it, which frees you up to do more sales, which helps you to scale faster, which helps you to get that higher multiple in the event that you want to sell. So I love that.
Yeah.
All right. By the way, I hope y'all are writing this down because I mean this fresh in his brain, so he's not making this up. Okay, here's a question I always like to ask. So, what is something that you had to completely unlearn that you thought was like mandatory? So, like for me, oh man, I gotta work all these crazy. I gotta work 12, 14 hours, just like Gary Vee talk about, baby hustle. And I had to unlearn that because I'm like, bro, this is not sustainable at all. I
Yep.
cannot do this with 3 kids, with being married. I can't do that. So, what's something you feel like you had to unlearn along the way?
I would say that's a huge aspect. My first business before the agency, there was no acquisition. We closed the doors. We raised 130 something $1,000 in capital from friends and family, launched a product. Product failed and had to close the doors. But I was working those crazy hours, right? And so then when it got to the end of it, I didn't know who Brad was anymore. I lost my identity because for so long my identity got tied to that company. And so that was one thing I learned early on with that. What I'll say I've learned over the course of, now Talent Fuse is business number three. First business, I was so focused on getting the product right, getting it out there, getting it built correct, everything like that, that I was so afraid to ship a product or talk to customers before I got it right that we then launched it and our end users didn't like the product. That's a bad problem to have when you're trying to grow a business and you need revenue and sales to keep the business running, right? So then the agency, I kind of got a little bit better about it. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna do be better about talking with customers and getting the sales in and everything like that. But I was very much still hyper focused on like the results of my clients, the operations of my clients. Even when we were using white label and I was supposed to trust the fact that somebody else was doing the work and do it correctly, I was constantly like looking at the product and making sure that everything looked well on there. Now with talent views, I mentioned Karen on my team. In a way, I actually Adam and I did a podcast last week where we talked about the acquisition and everything. And I looked at Adam and I said, Adam, I was fortunate, but also unfortunate at the same time that my son went into the NICU and then went into hospital how many times this year. And the reality is that I was fortunate because what it did is it forced me to learn how to delegate and hand things off. And so I kid you not, my plans to launch Talent Fuse on April 1st, March 30th, my son gets admitted into the PICU. So I have two options, either don't launch or launch. I decide I'm not letting the enemy prevent me from launching this company. So I launched the company. Well, now I'm in the hospital. And thankfully I had Karen, who was on my team from the agency, who I brought over on the Talent Fuse side of things. But as we're onboarding clients and we're signing on new clients and everything like that, I was forced to say Karen's going to be the one that's handling this because I'm in the hospital with my son or I'm in the hospital with my wife. And so what that has now forced me to do, and when Karen and I had the idea behind Talent Fuse and really getting it going, she was like, okay, we got to figure out how we're going to interview people and this and that. And I'm like, Karen, we've already done that internally. Yeah, but we're going to do it at a larger like number than what we're doing now. And I said, Karen, I need to find that first client. We got to sell, and then we can figure out the processes later. And so now with Talent Fuse, the thought process has always been, let's find the revenue, let's get the sales in the door, we can figure out the processes later. And so now we're constantly improving. We have an entire virtual interview process that we're in the middle of like swapping over softwares that we're using and everything. And we're only 5 months old and we're already having to find a new system and tool to use, because what got us there in the beginning is not going to get us there for 3x and 10x and everything like that. And so rather than me getting hyper focused on it, I've now found somebody who can do the operations, who can go in and make changes and everything like that. And to be honest, now that I have a wife, kid, and like I don't have time to sit here and like mess around with all the different aspects of operations. Like I have to sell because I got to put a roof over my head. We're now with Talent Fuse, we're a team of 5. So I got to put a roof over 4 other people's head, including my own. And so I don't have time to try to sit here and figure out operations and mess around with all that. So that's the biggest thing for me that I've learned over the course of now 3 businesses is I became so hyper focused at first on like getting the product right. Now I'm like, I don't care. Let's ship something. Let's talk to our customers. Let's see how it works. If they don't like it or if they don't see value in something, then let's figure out how we can fix it. As an example, we had one agency client that told us like, well, we're not really seeing the value in the ongoing training and education and everything like that. Okay. Well, do you even know if your VAs are attending these trainings? No. Do I know that they're attending trainings? To be honest, no, we didn't. We were building so fast, we didn't have a mechanism there to track it. So now every time a VA attends a training, they have to check in on a form. They put in their name, their direct report's name, their email address, and that agency owner gets an email that says, hey, just to let you know your VA, John Doe, attended this training, whatever that is. And it's all built actually on high level. Our entire recruiting system, except for one piece of software, is all built on high level. And so now we're doing things like that because we're talking with our customers, we're listening to them, but I'm not letting that feedback like I would before. If I got that feedback with the agency, I would go into like fear mode. I would be afraid to bring on another client because of an issue with the white label partner or whatever. Okay, I got that feedback. Cool. Now on a sales presentation, I'm telling a client, hey, we're implementing this right now. It's not done yet, but you should be able to see this in the next 2 to 4 weeks once you come on board with us. And so we're building this plane as we're flying and everything like that. And that's been a huge lesson for me in this.
Woo, there's a lot of good stuff right there. He talked about learning how to delegate, outsourcing to your team, taking action and being on offense and figuring out some of these smaller pieces later, like SOPs, instead of trying to get stuck there, just removing different excuses and speed bumps to stop him from serving clients. That's good. I really hope y'all are taking notes because I mean, he just hit y'all with this is how you sell and get paid. This is how, when you get a second chance, you redo it even better. All right, let's go rapid fire. All right, quick questions. If you
Yep.
could go back in time in a time machine, you know everything you know right to this second, to 18 or 22-year-old you, what do you tell yourself?
I would have told myself not to go off to a university because I was ready to be an entrepreneur back then, but I was so focused on what other people thought and how entrepreneurship wasn't the way. You had to have a plan B in case entrepreneurship didn't work out. So I went out and got a 4 year degree. Guess who's now sitting on $115,000 in debt from a 4 year university because he listened to everybody else and didn't follow his dreams initially. And so I see people in my feed who are running an agency, but they're also getting their degree in marketing. I'm like, why the hell are you doing that? If you are called and meant to be an entrepreneur, go and do it. Don't take this plan B of going to a university. And again, I met my wife when I went off to college. And so I joked that it cost me 100 grand to meet my wife. And so 18, 20-year-old me, I would have gone all in. I would have, even if I moved because I wanted to go from St. Louis to Kansas City, after my first year where I really felt in my heart like college isn't for me, but I need this plan B. I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to disappoint this. I should have dropped out and gone and worked the sales job I was working at T-Mobile, just done that full time and then built a business on the side. I didn't need the degree. I'm doing what I was doing beforehand, just with the debt behind something that I'm not using these two fancy pieces of paper that are up here on my wall. And so that's like nothing related to running a business, but in terms of life and like listening to other people is just go all in on whatever it is. Because me not listening to myself and listening to others now costs me 115 grand.
I think that's a good ending. All right, tell the people if they're like, man, I like this guy. He has some people that can help me. How do they get in touch with you? Tell them the name of the company again, the whole nine.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they can connect with me at talentfuse.io. Shoot me an email, brad at talentfuse.io. And then I'm online, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just search for me on there. Happy to connect and all those good things. And Cameron, you always talk about profit first and all of those things. I've designed the model behind Talent Fuse and the way that we help recruit talent and the way we also help protect your margins as an agency owner. So hiring through us is going to be much more of affordable than going white label, anything like that. So
Perfect. All right. As we wrap this up, y'all heard how to get in touch with them. This is how we're doing it in season 4. We're getting people who make big moves, who are happy, who are excited, who are buying, selling, coaching on it. And guys, he dropped a lot of gems here about acquisition, how to position yourself for the sale. This is season 4. So these are the types of people we're going to bring. We're super excited. Brad, thank you